So this week, Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves doubled down on the removal of winter fuel allowances for about 10 million pensioners, many of whom will be cold over the winter, too afraid to switch the heating on as energy companies prepare to rack up their prices by 10%. Which is odd, really, because when the Tories were in charge, the Labour Party's own research when they were in opposition suggested that just under 4,000 pensioners would die if the Tories went ahead with the exact same plan. Are old people expendable now, Rachel? Or is there some research somewhere that says otherwise? Oh, sorry, I forgot, you didn't do any other research on the effects of this policy, so we'll just have to take your word for it that 4,000 pensioners will die. But hey-ho, there's a black hole and we've got a plan. And what? To put the pensioners in it? What was that? Difficult decisions?
We're going to have to take the tough decisions and take them early, and we will. Part of that is being honest with people about the choices that we face, how tough this will be. And frankly, things will get worse before they get better.
Well, on that cheery note, a plan put together by people who, in the main, will never need to suffer the consequences of, because, let's face it, our MPs are pampered and don't live in the world that you and I inhabit. For starters, the basic salary of a Member of Parliament in the House of Commons is £91,346 plus expenses, and that was from April this year. In addition, MPs are able to claim allowances to cover the costs of running an office and employing staff and maintaining a constituency residence or a residence in London. This year alone, on top of their salary, our Chancellor Rachel Reeves has already claimed £4,500 in accommodation, £2,055 in council tax, and bear in mind they are thinking of scrapping the single-person discount, which has been very beneficial to me, I might add, as a struggling single mother, and very much needed. In rent, she's already claimed £2,280 and £100 on utilities, and these, as I understand it, are just her personal expenses. In fact, go and check it out for yourselves. Go to theipsa.org.uk. And IPSA is the independent body that determines the amount MPs earn. But yet the MPs never turn down their pay rises. Why would they? And every year when these rises occur, most say, oh, it's not up to me, but what can I do? What can I say? I guess I'll just have to take it. MPs have subsidised bars and restaurants, and once they have done their time, well, many of them end up in the Houses of Lords on another cushy number. So here's what I think, Rachel. Most of us on earnings of 93k have to pay for our own accommodation, council tax, no free transport, and very rarely work in environments where food and drink are subsidised. And don't get me started on the bars. And all those expenses, Rachel, would in the real world be coming out of our wages. So I challenge you, Rachel, to spend a week with a pensioner who is just above the winter fuel allowance threshold. I doubt you'd last a day. I also invite you to fill in the pension credit form yourself. Let's imagine you have arthritis, which is very common in old age, which worsens with the cold, by the way. And bear in mind, as there's a 9-week backlog, Rachel, you probably won't be seeing it very soon. So what do you think? Yeah? You didn't even, apparently, do a risk assessment on the impact of your policy. Pretty ill thought out, don't you think? Perhaps you could do the risk assessment personally by actually living it, Rachel. So I think Parliament could save a fortune if MPs have to live by the same rules as the rest of us. It's a bit like being in prison, Rachel. You've been an MP that long, you've lost track of what it's like in the real world. And to all you MPs, in the real world, 93k for the majority of us would have to cover all our costs. And most of us don't get free clothes or use stately homes that are paid for accommodation or paid for travel to work. Most of us have to make sacrifices, which we have to fund all by ourselves. Perhaps if you lot lived like the rest of us, you'd have an understanding of the effect of your policies have on the lives of real people, the people that you are supposed to serve. Well, joining me now, the Director of Research at the Adam Smith Institute, Maxwell Marlowe. Maxwell, well, you can see how I feel about the whole winter fuel scenario. Let's take a look at the MP's earnings, though, right? £93,000, that's quite a lot. Most people don't earn that. So is it reasonable to suppose that perhaps some of the expenses for MPs should perhaps not exist and they should maybe live like the rest of us?
Hi, Nana. Thank you for having me on the show. No, we should be paying MPs more, actually. Let's remember that there are only 650 odd MPs, and we need our policymakers to be of the highest quality. And a lot of the people of the very highest quality are working in the private sector in very competitive jobs that are paid much more. And in my opinion,
give me an example.
Singapore, for example.
Sorry, just to quickly stop you there, Maxwell. So give me an example of somebody in the private sector who will probably earn a lot more than an MP. You know, like give me an example of a similar job or some representative somewhere.
Well, Singapore is a fantastic example of this.
In this country, though.
In the private sector, we can see accountants, lawyers, doctors, professors, people who work in finance, innovators, people who work in tech, engineers. There are loads and loads and loads of people in this country who earn way more than that, and I think would be very, very welcome in Parliament. And we should really tempt them to do this public service with a higher salary. To be honest, I think it's pitiful that we're paying our policymakers, our legislators, only £90,000 a year. It should be much higher than that, 150 odd.
150 odd. So add in all the expenses and everything else like that they get, it's probably nearer 150 anyway, isn't it? Wouldn't you say?
Yes, well, of course, but that's just the expenses for, running the office, for doing their job as an MP, and we should have expenses for that. They should be kept an eye on. I'm glad you brought up IPSA, which is quite transparent. But I think it's really important that we give our legislators the tools and indeed the incentives to do a really good job. And, at the Adams Citizen Institute, something we would recommend is linking MPs' growth, MP salary to the growth of the economy. And as you'll know, for the past 2 months, we haven't seen any economic growth. So they shouldn't be getting a salary increase, in our opinion. But if you can link it to economic growth, I think we'd all be much better off because of it.
Well, I think that's an incentive for them to do a good job, because otherwise a lot of them are sitting there just taking the money, and I think some of them become a little bit deluded whilst they're cocooned in this wonderful environment of Westminster, where they sit there and they get subsidised bars, subsidised restaurants. Now, I'm not really that jealous of that. I'm just upset that within all of that they can't see that policies like winter fuel payment is a little bit harsh and a bit unfair. Do you think that... give me some more detail on that winter fuel payment. What do you understand? How much will the Treasury raise in doing this?
Well, they won't raise anything from this. They'll save about £1.4 billion, as far as Rachel Reeves has told us so far. But that really doesn't cut the mustard as far as, the size of the problem we're facing in this country. We can put the fiscal black hole, as it's known, to one side. I know that the Treasury have refused to give the Financial Times any information on the makeup of this black hole. But I mean, let's look at the people who are paying for this. It's you and I, Nana. It's your viewers at home. It's the taxpayers. And you said in your monologue earlier, fund all by ourselves. We're doing that. So let's look at taxes. Tax Freedom Day this year, which is the day the average person stops paying the Treasury, was on the 10th of June. That means taxpayers are working for 141 days of the year to pay for taxes. The deficit. I'm sure remember, start of the coalition government, a lot of people talking about the deficit. That's essentially the credit card we use to borrow on international markets to pay for day-to-day spending. That's £120 billion. That's essentially a whole month of tax in a year on top of the taxes we already pay. And unfortunately, we need to be having a really serious look at either increasing taxes massively, which is something, we really should not be doing, or we need to be cutting large swathes out of government spending, because let's remember, the national debt is £2.3 trillion pounds, and I don't think we're going to. I know my great-grandchildren won't be seeing the end of that. Never mind, the people who are receiving state welfare today, and of course, the state pension is the largest expense in the single expense in the welfare area of government. That's £138 billion. It's ginormous. We need to have a look at our finances, and we need to start cutting.
But there's no mention of growth there, though, is there?
No, there isn't. But, if we're going to have to, unfortunately, I'm not sure how much cutting we're going to be doing. So that means we have to pay for more out of taxes. And we know that taxes can limit growth. One of the big concerns we're seeing at the moment, it's twofold. Firstly, we're seeing maybe an increase in capital gains, which would be the highest capital gains tax in Europe, if the rumours are true, which is going to be massively disincentivising for investment, and investment leads to growth. And the second thing is the non-doms policy, to be honest, Nana. And I know it seems quite alienating, but that's really important, that we should not be abolishing the non-dom status, because a lot of these non-doms are investing in high growth industries in this country. We haven't had growth in 2 months. We need to fix this. It's a serious, serious problem.
2 months since Keir Starmer took the reins, and everything is getting worse before it gets better. And he's saying that he's going to require 2 terms to do that, 10 years. He should be lucky if he lasts even 10 more weeks if this carries on. Listen, Maxwell, so in your view, you think that MPs should be paid more, and then would you ditch the expenses altogether, or...?
I think that'd be wise, yes. I think we should have prudent MPs. And, I've met lots of MPs throughout my time at the Adam Smith Institute, and a lot of them are absolutely excellent. But sometimes I do question the policy decisions coming out of Westminster and how good it is for free markets, for a growing economy and for free people. And you'll come on to it later, I'm sure, Nano, but, this outdoor smoking ban is not something I'd give a pay rise for, to be honest.
Sounds it's a bit of nonsense. Maxwell Marlowe, Director of Research at the Adam Smith Institute, thank you very much. Right, let's quickly welcome again to my panel former Conservative MP Dame Andrea Jenkins and also the former Labour MP Lloyd Russell Moyle. Lloyd, he's suggesting pay rises. We'll talk to this in a wider scope, but what did you think on the monologue? Am I right about that, Rachel Reeves? Perhaps she could spend a week living with a pensioner who's just above the threshold.
I think it would be very useful for all MPs to spend a week on people who are on different forms of benefits. Pensions are a benefit. So if you're on the state pension, you live off the state pension, you're living off benefits. And if you're living off job seekers allowance, you're living off benefits. I think MPs would be useful. They have schemes for MPs to go and spend the summer working with the military or with the armed forces or with firefighters. And they have schemes for MPs to go off to America for the month of the holidays. I think setting up a scheme for MPs to go and spend a month living with the budget, with a normal person. I think that's a fantastic idea, and I think GBNews and us, we should promote that and start that scheme up.
I want Rachel Reeves. Now, I also would like to see Rachel Reeves fill in this pension credit form that she's telling everybody to fill in, the 20 pages of it or so. A lot of old people have arthritis and all sorts of things and don't have the help.
One of the questions is how long have you been in the country as well? Yes. So to me, are they giving it to other people who haven't earned the taxes over the years as well? So that's what I find concerning.
So you think, so what are your thoughts on the monologue? Am I wrong?
Look, I think, I liked what he said from the Adam Smith Institute about linking it to, how the economy is doing. I think
Norway does that.
Oh, really?
All of Norway's public sector pay, they can only get the pay increase that the private sector get. They can never go above what the private sector gets.
I agree with that, definitely.
Interesting.